The Wizard Cat by Gregory Cornille. Several anguishing days had just gone by. These people, who had enjoyed Cutchy's presence so much, were still concerned. The little girls, as well as the parents, would jump at any rustle, crackle, or meow outside. Each time, they were convinced that their cat was coming back. But after having checked, there was nothing else but wind and moving shadows. His absence was more and more painful. The anguish of his disappearance would come back again, and deception continued to emphasize the sadness on the people's faces. Sometimes, during the night, a window would open, and one could hear calls and onomatopoeias destined to attract the cat in case he was around. Day after day, time went by, and still there was no news of the cat. The parents tried to console the children by making up a story in which Cutchy had simply taken a few days off for a holiday. There was not much else to do but let time appease their sadness and slightly diminish their mental suffering. It was a Sunday morning as the early sun lit up the blooming landscapes. A little girl had, as usual, opened one of the bay windows, just enough for a cat to be able to enter. Her cat. At midday, everybody was busy preparing lunch in a slightly lighter ambience than the previous days. The radio was on, playing a swinging beat, and the family started to sing, more or less in tune. The daddy dived into the music and excessively wiggled his hips to make his family laugh. At this moment, nobody thought that time was going to suddenly stop. When they all were in the same room, they simultaneously stopped for a long while, astounded by what they could see. The young cat who had talked with Cutchy the day before his disappearance was there, on the garden terrace, slowly but surely coming up to them. She looked around her, probably to reassure herself, and without hesitation walked into the house. Everybody stepped aside to let her enter. The little girls' faces lit up again and expressed immense joy in silence. The breathless family was overwhelmed. The beautiful anonymous cat walked on, hopped on the edge of the sofa, and then lied in Cutchy's basket, which she had quickly sniffed beforehand. Everybody was looking at each other, and it was the youngest daughter who cried out with joy the first, followed by her sister, who was excitedly jumping up and down. One of the girls shut the door as a precaution and then slowly came up to the new inhabitant. The cat stared at the young hands timidly coming up to her, and she let them know by a blink and a nod of the head that they were allowed to stroke her. The mother noticed that the cat purred rarely and even more discreetly than Cutchy, the bass baritone. For a good half hour, she enjoyed being stroked by the whole family. However, everybody was wondering about this situation and still hoped their own cat would come back. The cat's lenient attitude seemed to mean that she wanted to settle in this house. The girls wanted to find her a name, so a whole list of names was drawn up without anybody agreeing. After a few minutes of deliberation, the dear little furry new friend was baptized, and everyone cried out, "Welcome to you, Catchet." Very quickly, they had to face a little problem. This cat did not appreciate the food which had been previously served to her brother. This miss really did have her own personality. After a few trials, she ended up accepting a specific brand of dry food and finely minced fish and meatballs. "Would our mannered miss deign come forward? Her meal is served," the girl's father said ironically. This was not an excessive reaction. Catchet the coquette had an elegant way of behaving and an undeniable attraction for refined cuisine. A few weeks had gone by, and every time Catchet went out, everybody was apprehensive. Was she going to come back? Catchy's mysterious disappearance was still in everybody's mind. But on the contrary, Catchet never left as long as her brother did on fine days. She enjoyed spending most of her time sleeping in the shade of a bush or in the wicker basket which had become hers. One day, she came back with a bad cough and she lost her appetite. She was obviously ill and everybody panicked. Luckily, after several vaccinations and a few medications prescribed by the vet, Catchet became a young, vivacious cat again and reassured the people around her by her cheerful attitude. Summer was starting to settle with its very hot and sunny days. It was at this period that the girl's father fell very ill. The pains were acute and caused stomach and back spasms, doubling up this well-built man with pain. These harbingers had alerted him, and it became necessary to operate this body weakened by too much pain. The whole family went through a morose period. Regularly, the mother had to reassure her daughter's fears of what was going to happen to their daddy. "Don't worry," she used to say. "Your father is taken care of by good doctors in this hospital. They will do the necessary to relieve his pains and make him get better." During several weeks, the girls and their mother felt very lonely at home, hoping that the man they loved so much would soon recover. It was at this period that Catchet started to change her habits and totally change her behavior. She became more nervous, excited, and was always on the lookout. She would run in any direction, climb on the swing, then hurriedly jump off it again, and straight away after, hop on the highest walnut tree branches. In the night, one could hear her run in the gutter and then come back to scratch at the windows. Back inside, she would meow to go back out again, and would hunt like a famished feline. At dawn, many little lifeless rodents were found on the doorstep, to the girls' great dismay, who tried to find life in the animals by moving them with a wooden stick. Nobody really understood this sudden change of behavior, as she had been up until then a rather calm and composed cat. At the hospital, the little girls recounted to their father their day at school, but mostly told him about Catchet's ludicrous behavior, namely as a hunter, which made them laugh. A few weeks later, the pains diminished, and the father was soon going to be able to go home. The man, who had now recovered, thanked the doctors and nurses, and set off home, helped by his wife. When he arrived, the girls felt like jumping in his arms, but they avoided it, as their father was still weak and had lost a lot of weight. "It is so good to be back home," he murmured. His heart was full of emotion, and a few tears of happiness ran down his cheeks. A long phase of convalescence started, and little by little he found his everyday rhythm again. Catchet had been present when her master had come home, and she hadn't left him one instant since, almost causing incidents, as she was always in his way when he moved around. His absence had apparently disturbed her, and since he had been back home, she had finally calmed down. However, her behavior was still strange. Every evening, during months, she would sit at the end of the large parent's bed and waited till he went to bed to relieve this body of pain. At the start, the girl's father felt like pushing her away, as he was scared she was going to increase his pain. Catchet felt this fear and delicately came closer to reassure him. She would settle very close to the right side of the body when he lay on his back, and she would gently press herself against him. About 10 minutes later, she would change positions with much precaution and settle on his stomach, a zone she felt was in great pain. She used her 2 front paws, with her claws inside, to slightly press on the zone to find the best position. Then she would curl up on herself and start her therapy, which rarely lasted more than a quarter of an hour. And day after day, she would repeat these steps over and over again. Catchet continuously brought her help and contributed to relieve the man's pains. From time to time, Catchet went to visit her mother. She told her about her adventures and explained that she had finally found a pleasant place to live. She had also learned to master this gift which had troubled her so much previously, and she now knew how to perfectly control it. As for her master, he was always astonished by the animal's kindness and particularly enjoyed it because after each of her interventions, he felt much better. He recovered faster than planned and was now capable of playing with his children again. Today, everybody is well and lives in perfect harmony. It has even been told that the father decided to write this story to pay a tribute to all the people who helped him through these hard times, without forgetting this cat, who had extraordinary qualities. As for Kachi, people from another neighborhood heard of a cat who had disappeared during several weeks and who went back to his initial home, to the delight of the little boys who had very impatiently waited for him. The end.